somebody isn't familiar with your books, what is a theme that goes throughout?
I would probably say choice and consequence, and that I've always thought it's really interesting that a lot of stories that I love seem to frame things in sort of worlds of black and white, and I really wanted to explore the gray area between, like, you know, where somebody has a really serious moral dilemma and how they deal with this, and sometimes that their choices may not reflect decisions that we would see as good, but ultimately, like, I don't know, maybe greater good sort of issues, but I'm big on choice and consequence.
Do you know the ending before you start, or do you kind of like just start off on the ride?
I'm a crazy plotter. We always have this, and I'm not a huge fan of this differentiation between plotter and pantser. Is what we call a plotter. Somebody's obviously going through and having a really extensive plot or outline, whereas a pantser flies by the seat of their pants. Yeah. So that's what we're like, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? And actually, George R. R. Martin had, I feel, is a much better analogy for this. Because he also said he doesn't like plotters or pantsers. He talks about the fact that you're either an architect or a gardener. So an architect goes in and they have like a scaffolding, they have a blueprint, they have a general idea of what kind of home is going to be built, whereas a gardener plants seeds and just lets things grow. So I am definitely more of the architect, but I think, you know, it'd be best, we always talk about this, if you kind of be both, a little bit of both, because then you can give yourself a little freedom with direction. But I am a crazy plotter, so I usually know what's happening at the end of a book prior to writing it. Yeah.
Does it come from an idea of character or the storyline or setting? Like, what's usually the inspiration?
These are great questions. I definitely am more of a character-driven writer. And when I'm getting ready to plot out a book after I do my research, because I also write historical fantasy, so I love research. I'm a huge nerd. I have this like binder that's full of like research materials. My dog actually now uses it as a step onto the couch. But then I sit down and I make character sketches, and from those character sketches, so I'll talk about, like, let's say I want Shahrazad, my main character in The Wrath and the Dawn, to portray loyalty. So I'll have that word out there as a character trait I want her to portray, and then I'll decide later on how I want to fit that into a certain scene. And then with those scenes, I almost see them like movie reels, so you're cutting and pasting them into chronological order, and then you build a narrative from that, and that's what I tend to do at the beginning.
What are you working on next?
So I am just finishing final edits on The Rose and the Dagger, which is the sequel to The Wrath and the Dawn. And so I can promise more kissing, more sword fighting.
And combo there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And maybe even a magic carpet ride or two. So
that's exciting. Will it be like the Aladdin?
I think, okay, so I loved that scene in the movie, especially as a little girl. I loved it. I definitely have tweaked it a little bit, but I think I've tweaked it in a way that's, I hope, very satisfying, because there's something so wonderfully, like, it's wish fulfillment, being able to fly in any forms. So I wanted to make sure when I was writing the scenes where that took place, that it was as grand as possible. So, yeah.
If you could live in any part of your book or through any character, who would you want to live through?
I should say Shahrazad or Khalid, but I feel like they're just continuously pressed with these incredibly difficult decisions, and I'm not actually sure what I would do in those incredibly difficult decisions. I based the character of Jalal off my husband, so I should probably say Despina, because then I'd wind up like it. And I love Despina too, so she's got some great sass and just like a wonderful story behind her as well. So, like, yeah, I think probably Despina.
Did you ask your husband if you could base the character off of him, or did you just do it?
No. And then we're like, and then I'm reading the book out loud to him. He's like, I'm like, yeah, that's you. And he's like, this is odd. And I was like, yeah, it's definitely you.
Did he like it, or was he just like, okay?
No, he's been so wonderfully supportive. He's loved it. I mean, he's not a big reader of fiction. He tends to read more nonfiction, books about making money, how to continue making money, which I would rather, like, suffer through anything else. I'd rather suffer through Tolstoy's War and Peace 5 or 6 different times than read these books where people explain.
At least he is.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you do that. And he totally doesn't understand the fiction thing, but I'll read my books out loud to him, and he's really great. Yeah.